Hello and welcome to this video in REBA's On Demand series focusing on innovation. I'm Debi O'Donovan, Director and co-founder of REBA, and today we're going to be talking about innovation in embedding inclusivity in reward, talent and wider organisational culture. And I'm joined today by two great women from Wood Plc, the global engineering and consultancy company. And we're going to dive into the drivers for D&I in 2021, how to use data and HR systems, the experience in different countries, and what other reward and benefit professionals could do to focus on D&I at their organisations. But first, to find out how Wood embarked on its relatively new journey, I'd like to welcome Claire Yule, President Reward and Mobility at Wood, and Lisa Ferrol, who is their President of Culture and Inclusion. And Claire, I'd like to turn to you first. In Reward, the big focus when it comes to diversity and inclusion is often on a single number, the gender pay gap, or at least it is in the UK. And to me, that feels like a single gender pay gap number is an outcome rather than a strategy. So where does the strategy to embed inclusivity in reward and talent and ultimately culture really come from? And what were the main drivers for Wood?
I mean, whilst the gender pay gap has opened up the conversation for many organisations and people, I totally agree with you that it is an outcome, which we would typically call a lagging indicator. I don't think it tells the real story or necessarily addresses the real issues. So, for example, in Wood, our drivers are much more focused on equal pay for equal jobs in the same location and much broader from an inclusivity point of view. We really want to ensure that there are no biases, so regardless of gender, but other biases that can come into play there. So we're focused on ensuring all aspects of reward, including pay, including benefits, are internally fair and externally competitive. We need to be able to win work and receive fair compensation for it, but also to be able to attract, develop and retain talent with that big focus on future skills. So we're really proud to have announced last week some of our new strategic measures. So we have announced that by 2030, we intend to have 40% female leadership representation, which is a fantastic success and journey for us. We're currently at 31%. And we're also introducing some new ESG framework measures in our variable reward for this year, with a big focus on conscious inclusion and what that means across the whole business as well.
Wow, so some really big, fantastic objectives and targets of what you're aiming to. So coming to you, Lisa, Wood is relatively at the start of its inclusion journey. Can you tell me a bit more about what got you started and where you've got up to now?
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. As you say, we're relatively at the start of an exciting journey for Wood. I would say that our focus on inclusion and diversity really started back when we came together as Wood back in 2017, when we were creating our values and behaviours. And the topic of inclusion and diversity was at the forefront of many of our employees' minds. And so we started very much with a bottom-up approach to employee networks and focusing on community and bringing people together. What I would say that has become even more apparent to us is our focus on well-being and well-being in its full entirety. And that concept of social well-being was really important to us. So we used our employee assistance programme and that global access to employee assistance as a real catalyst for engaging people on the conversation. And I guess the other element that I would say is last year during the summer, naturally with the killing of George Floyd, our focus really started to intensify on inclusion and diversity. That bottom-up approach of employee networks wasn't enough anymore, and we really need to take that strategic direction. Came up with our strategic framework that focuses in on 5 pillars and has really enabled us to start to do more in this area. And as Claire said, last week being another milestone for us in terms of announcing our targets.
And Lisa, we were talking about particularly that bit about the EAP that you referred to there. And I think the EAP itself played a small catalyst in some of your rethinking. Can you just tell us about what you discovered about your EAP and what you did about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we were preparing to launch our global EAP, we did some research into some of the articles and the content that was going to be shared with our workforce. And there was almost an alarm bell moment for us in terms of some of the language that was being used. And I know Claire and I had a great conversation where I had a bit of a reaction to what I had read. I said, maybe we need to think about the language that's being used, make it more inclusive, make it more relevant to our teams, particularly because it was going to be going out to such a wide and diverse audience. So that really started a partnership conversation with our vendor, who were a little surprised, I think, that they hadn't had this feedback before. But it was really great. They were receptive to it. We worked together, and we were able to really make the language appear more accessible and inclusive to many of our employees. So we're always learning, and I think that partnership with your vendors is so important.
Absolutely. I think we're going to touch on that in a little bit in our conversation. But coming back to you, Claire, to achieve inclusivity, data is crucial. And I'd imagine that you're going to be heavily reliant on your HR systems. And these are both areas that could be quite tricky for a lot of employers, including yourselves, no doubt. So what lessons have you learned along the way that you can pass on to other employers?
I do smile when I hear the word HR systems. So we have a golden opportunity in Wood. We do not have one HR system in place. We have several. And because of the history of the business, it's grown up through a lot of acquisitions over a significant period of time. We perhaps haven't invested as heavily in having one system as we can. So we're on that journey just now. And we are hopeful that by the end of 2021, we will have approximately 70% of our headcount into one HR system. We've currently only got about 37, 38%. So it's a real challenge for us getting accurate data and pulling it together from a reporting format from all those different systems that we have in place at the moment. And I think one of the things that we've been really focusing in on and partnering with Lisa and her team is how do we gather better quality data from employees themselves? How do we get them involved and feeling safe to provide us with additional data that historically we may not have asked for or may not have reported on? So one of the things that we're working on just now is how can we gather ethnicity data on a global basis, making sure that we're taking into account all the different legal requirements in different countries, the data protection issues that we've got, but more importantly, making sure that our employees understand why we're doing it, what we're going to do with that data, what it will lead to, and more about that broader inclusivity journey that we're doing it in order to inform business decisions in a positive way, and really to get them involved with the communication program around that. So we're excited about it. It is proving tricky, and we are partnering with a couple of vendors to help us with that, but we're really excited about what that's going to be able to help us with on our inclusivity journey as we go further forward.
And Claire, on that, is there any particular lesson that you've picked up early on that you would want to flag up to other reward directors or other employers on the D&I teams at this stage when it comes to data and systems?
Yeah, I think it's if you're based in lots of different countries, you have to be really cognizant of a one size fits all may not work. So you have to take into account those local laws. Really, really important. But I would say, please don't let that put you off, because the key thing here is working with your employees, helping them understand why we're intending on gathering the data and what we're going to do it for. So we're hoping to use it for good and take the people with you. Get those groups of employees to help you come up with the communications. We're going to be using our race and ethnicity network, for example, to help us with those communication engagement programs. So don't let all the legals, please don't do this and please don't do that, put you off. Think about why you're doing it, and then you can work around some of those challenges that are going to come along the way. but certainly don't think that just because you can do it one way in one country, that you could apply that in different countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, talking about different countries, I want to come to you, Lisa. Wood clearly operates across many countries. And are you finding that the inclusivity journey varies between the countries? What lessons can both global and UK-based reward and benefit professionals learn from other countries on this particular journey?
Yeah, as you say, we operate in around 60 different countries, and everybody is at their own point in the story. And it's important to recognise that the maturity levels will be different in different parts of the world. But the one thing that I always reflect on for Wood is that there's a uniting factor in all of this, and I think that's our values. We created our values from the bottom up, quite different to potentially how others have done it, in the sense that they were co-created with 6,000 of our employees telling us what they wanted the business to really believe in, and one of those was care, and they were absolutely determined that care would be the value for the organisation, and that's care for our people, it's care for our communities, it's care for our business as a whole. So I think that's the one thing that I always reflect on, is that there's more that unites us than divides us. And I think the other thing that has been quite unique for us is that when we came together as Wood, that we created a listening group network, and that is available to everyone within the organisation, irrespective of what your level of contribution is. And our ability to tap into that particular network and involve our employees is so critical. And Claire's team are really leading the way in terms of, setting up focus groups, engaging with a broad community of employees to understand, what reward means to them and the transparency of reward. So I think that ability to be able to involve as many people as you can leads you to better understanding of what's going on and what the drivers are. So we can all be at different stages in the journey, but as long as we're continuing to listen, I think that is something that we can always build on.
Which is so crucial. And coming back to you, Claire, with your reward hat on, I think you'll know that in some organisations like yourselves, you have worked, the reward team works with the inclusivity team, but that isn't the case everywhere. So what would you say to your fellow reward and benefit professionals who might not be working like that yet? What can they do to do their part to embed inclusivity into organisational culture as a reward professional?
I mean, that would be an important tip. For goodness sakes, do partner with your culture and engagement team if you're lucky enough to have one, because it is by us working together that we've made such great improvement. Actually, I think really think about things from the employee experience point of view, and think about how you can reduce the potential for bias wherever you can. Review those policies, your terms, your conditions. Are they truly inclusive, or do you have some that are still set back in the sort of 1980s or 1990s? And it can be really difficult to do that in certain countries, because you do have to take into account cultural differences, consider them and debate them. So don't assume, again, that you can impose the cultural norms in one country on another. You do have to take into account those differences. As Lisa mentioned earlier, think about, are you partnering with vendors who are truly inclusive? What's the style of communication engagement that they're using to help you work with your employees? And does that need a little bit of modernization, for want of a better word? Really important also to make sure that you're partnering with the business leaders, so that it isn't seen to be something, that reward and benefits or any aspect of HR is doing to the business. So partner with the business leaders, educate, engage, train them. And that includes people in the broader HR community. And we're really focused on this within Wood at the moment, and also that wider employee base as well, so that you can have the top-down approach, the bottom-up approach, and you're coming at it from all angles. So really, really important for you. Also important, to have a good look at what your data analysis is telling you, and think about what's the why behind that as well. And just try and eliminate any bias wherever possible, but make sure that you're getting that broad representation of views from across the organisation.
Absolutely. That sounds like some really good advice there. And Lisa, I'm aware that we're coming towards the end of our interview, so I want to throw a quick question to you. It's clear that diversity and inclusion journeys are rewarding, but they've also got their challenges. What's been the hardest issue to tackle that you found?
Yeah, no, it is challenging, but I also think it's so important to focus in on the topic, and it can be immensely rewarding as well. I would say that the biggest challenge that we've got is busting the myth that inclusion and diversity is a political topic. We're not trying to brainwash people within the organisation. We're trying to educate, inspire, and learn from one another. We all have our own fundamental belief systems, and we're not asking people to change those. What we are asking people to do is to listen to a potentially different lived experience from a different country or a different culture. And actually, we acknowledge that we should disagree with one another, and daring to disagree with one another is actually where the richness of learning comes from. So for me, constantly trying to remind people that this is not a battle between progressives and conservatives, that this is just learning from one another, and getting to know your colleagues a little better is what I would say we aim to do. And I think if we can do a lot more of that, then we'll all be in a richer place.
Absolutely. The benefits to individuals and business is just enormous. And a quick fire question to you, Claire. What has surprised you most about your D&I journey so far?
Oh, do you know what? I think it's probably the speed of change in a really positive way. Despite all the challenges we've all faced in the past year, I really do think the pandemic has improved the quality of conversations that we're able to have, whether that's around gender equality, whether it's around race, whether it's around mental health. If I think now about the types of conversations and the quality of conversations we now have in the organisation on mental health, we just weren't doing that 12 months ago. And people have the courage to come and share their stories now. And so that much broader inclusion journey that we're on just really feels that it's ramped up, despite everything else going on for everybody in the world just now. It's been a real opportunity for us, I think, because people are more reflective of the type of world that they want to be in, and, more importantly for us, the type of company that they want to work for.
And that's incredible and so true, that what might have seemed like a really tough year has actually brought to the fore some very positive behaviours and reflections. And it's amazing to hear what Wood has been doing with that and the progress that you've made over the last few months. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to both you, Claire, and to Lisa for giving us your time today to share the knowledge and your experience with our wider reward and employee benefits community via this REBA's first on-demand series focusing on innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.